Hey friends, welcome back to Mindset Hub Tube, the place where we dive into powerful books and timeless ideas that can completely transform the way you think, feel, and live. Today, we're beginning a journey into one of the most eye-opening books on the power of the mind, Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. The reason I'm making this series is simple. All of us struggle with stress, overthinking, and those endless negative thoughts that seem to run on repeat in our heads. This book shows us how to stop being prisoners of our own minds. And once you truly understand the lessons inside, you can unlock a level of peace and freedom that's been there all along. Now, let's get into part 1 of our summary, which covers the introduction and the first 3 chapters. The book begins with a powerful truth. Most of our suffering doesn't actually come from life itself, but from our thoughts about life. The human brain produces thousands of thoughts every day, and many of them are repetitive, fearful, and critical. The real problem is not that we have these thoughts, but that we believe them as if they are facts. We identify with them so deeply that we think they define us. But Joseph Nguyen reminds us that happiness and peace aren't things we need to chase in the outside world. They are already our natural state. They only get buried when we believe every single thought our mind throws at us. In the first chapter, Nguyen asks an important question. If everyone's goal in life is to be happy, then why do so many people feel restless, anxious, or dissatisfied? His answer is that our suffering comes from the illusion of lack. The mind is always telling us that something is missing, that we're not good enough, that we don't have enough, or that we'll finally be happy when we achieve the next goal. Sound familiar? The problem is, even when we achieve what we thought would make us happy, the feeling doesn't last. The mind quickly creates a new desire, and the cycle begins all over again. That's why happiness always feels just out of reach. Nguyen also makes a critical distinction here. Pain and suffering are not the same. Pain is inevitable, like losing a loved one or failing at something important. But suffering is the story we attach to that pain. For example, losing your job is painful, but telling yourself, "I'm worthless, I'll never recover, my life is ruined," creates suffering. Pain happens, but suffering is optional because it's created in the mind. The second chapter dives deeper into the nature of thought itself. Nguyen explains that thoughts are not reality. They're simply words and images appearing in your mind. Just because you think something doesn't make it true. Imagine your mind as a TV that never stops broadcasting. Some channels are entertaining, some are dramatic, and some are pure horror shows. But just because a channel is playing doesn't mean you have to sit there and watch it. You always have the choice to change the channel, or even turn off the TV. Here's the key. Our feelings don't come from reality itself, but from our thoughts about reality. For example, if someone doesn't reply to your message, one thought could be, "They're probably busy," which makes you feel calm. Another thought could be, "They're ignoring me, they don't care about me," which makes you feel hurt. The event is the same, but the thoughts create completely different emotions. Once you see this clearly, you realize that thoughts are powerful, but not always truthful, and that awareness alone can free you from believing every single one of them. Chapter 3 tackles something we all struggle with: overthinking. Overthinking feels like problem solving, but in reality, it rarely produces solutions. It just keeps us stuck in a loop of worry and stress. The mind convinces us that if we just think hard enough, we can gain control and prevent bad things from happening. But the truth is, life is uncertain, and no amount of mental spinning can protect us from that. Overthinking often creates anxiety because we're constantly rehearsing what-if scenarios in our heads. Nguyen describes the cycle clearly. First, something triggers worry. Then our mind loops endlessly through what-if thoughts. That creates anxiety, which makes us think even more about how to stop feeling anxious, and the cycle keeps growing stronger. The only way out of this trap is awareness. When you notice that you're lost in thought, pause for a moment and remind yourself, this is just a thought, not a fact. That little reminder creates space between you and the thought. From there, you can gently bring your focus back to the present, to your breath, to the sensations in your body, or simply to the task you're doing right now. The goal isn't to stop thinking. That's impossible. But to stop letting thoughts control your life. So the key takeaway from part 1 of this book is simple but life-changing. You are not your thoughts. Pain in life is inevitable, but suffering is optional because it comes from the stories your mind tells. Overthinking doesn't give you control. It only creates anxiety. And the way to reclaim your peace is to step back, notice your thoughts, and remember they are not reality. In part 2, Joseph Nguyen delves into the ego, identity, and the concept of inner freedom. Chapter 4 explains how the ego constantly defines us through labels, who we are, what we own, what we achieve, and how we compare to others. The ego thrives on separation, comparison, and fear, and it's never satisfied. Because the ego identifies so closely with these labels, any threat or challenge to them creates insecurity, anxiety, or defensiveness. The key insight here is that the ego is not who we truly are. We are the awareness that observes the ego, and by noticing its patterns, we start to loosen its grip. Chapter 5 explores the illusion of control. The ego convinces us that if we manage every situation perfectly, we can protect ourselves and achieve happiness. But life is unpredictable, and clinging to control only amplifies stress. True freedom, Nguyen explains, comes from surrendering the need to control what we cannot, while still taking action from clarity and calm rather than fear. This surrender opens the door to a profound sense of peace. Chapter 6 highlights the experience of living from awareness instead of ego. When we are no longer driven by the ego's demands for approval or perfection, we can navigate life with greater ease. Challenges still arise, but they no longer dictate our inner state. This awareness allows us to reconnect with our natural peace, which has been present all along, waiting beneath the noise of thought. Living from awareness rather than ego is the path to inner freedom. In part 3, Nguyen emphasizes the nature of thoughts and the optionality of suffering. Chapter 7 reinforces that thoughts are not facts. They are temporary events in the mind that we often mistake for truth. The more we identify with every thought, the more power we give it. But by noticing thoughts as passing events, we create a mental space where we can choose which thoughts to engage with and which to let go. Chapter 8 explains that suffering is optional. Life will inevitably bring pain, but suffering is the story we attach to that pain. When we stop resisting reality and cease feeding the mind's negative narratives, suffering dissolves. Even in difficult situations, peace remains accessible when we step back and witness our thoughts rather than identify with them. Chapter 9 ties everything together. Peace is our natural state. From birth, before overthinking and ego took hold, we lived in the present moment fully. That same natural peace remains within us. We don't need to create or chase it. We uncover it by seeing through the illusions created by our thoughts. Happiness and freedom are not external goals. They are present once we stop believing everything our mind tells us. In this final part, Nguyen provides practical guidance for integrating these lessons into daily life. Chapter 10 emphasizes observing thoughts without judgment, creating a gap between mental chatter and awareness, and choosing how to respond rather than reacting automatically. Tools like meditation, journaling, and mindful breathing are not meant to stop thoughts, but to strengthen awareness and presence. The concluding chapters reinforce that peace and freedom are our default state. Life will still bring challenges, but by no longer believing every thought, we prevent suffering from dominating our experience. This awareness allows us to respond with clarity, calm, and presence, rather than being controlled by fear or ego. If there's one takeaway from Don't Believe Everything You Think, it's this: your thoughts are not facts. Suffering is optional, and inner freedom is already within you. The more you practice awareness, the more you uncover the peace that has always been present. Friends, that wraps up our complete series on Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. If you enjoyed this series and want more deep dives into mindset, self-awareness, and life-changing books, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Mindset Hub Tube, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. And I'd love to hear from you. What's one thought you've been believing that you now realize isn't true? Drop it in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. Remember, don't believe everything you think, and give yourself the gift of awareness. Until next time, stay mindful,